Hello everyone! I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about what is the biggest challenge of becoming an author and also being an author. And it's not what you think. The first thing that comes to mind for many people when asked, what's the hardest thing to becoming an author and what's the hardest thing about working as an author? And they'll tell you, oh, it's coming up with the ideas, it's being inspired, it's working on that hard road of you have your manuscript, now trying to get it published, it's marketing your book and trying to get those sales, it's trying to do the in-person conventions. There's any number of things that you can come up with of what's the most challenging in becoming an author and working as an author. But here's the real deal. The truly most challenging thing about becoming an author and being an author is to keep going. I know this sounds really Captain Obvious and probably sounds a little schmaltzy, but honestly, that is the hardest part of just being a writer in general, is to just keep going. Life is going to come at you and give you 1,001 reasons and excuses and challenges and roadblocks to just kill your writing, to kill your creativity, to just absolutely bog you down with obligations in order to have you finally throw your hands up in the air. Or maybe it's one of those things where it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Whatever the case, so many people will just at some point realize they've given up, whether that's all at once or little by little, and it just sort of happens. Now, how can this possibly be the most challenging thing when there are so many other challenging aspects to that road to becoming an author, and then when you become an author, to work as an author and to keep churning out those books and to get those sales and to get your book in front of those readers? How can it just boil down to something so simply as to just keep going? Well, the just keep going is what drives all of those other challenges. There are people that will give up at every step of the way and just not keep going. In my other videos, as well as Neil recently did a video about how ideas are a dime a dozen. Ideas are not hard to come up with. There are so many ways of creating ideas, whether you want to draw from your personal experience, whether you want to write about current events, or you want to write about historical events, whether you want to do some sort of challenge where you're given a prompt or you're given a series of prompts, whatever the case may be, there's no shortage for ideas. And yet there will be people who like the idea of becoming a writer, or they already are a writer and they just run out of ideas. Just no more ideas to be had. They had their one novel, or they had X number of novels, whatever have you, and then just one day the well runs dry and they don't keep going. They don't dig deep and try to find that inspiration. They don't go looking for other avenues of inspiration. They don't look for different prompts or challenges or anything. They just kind of sit down right at that beginning of the long path and go, I'm out of ideas, I'm done. There are people who get to the point where they actually start writing something, and at whatever stage of the creation process, they stop and they just don't have it in them to finish the manuscript. There are people that will finish the whole thing, and then it comes down to you got to do the editing, and then they just fall apart, whether it's they just can't edit it themselves, they don't have the means or the connections in order to have somebody else edit it for them, and it just falls apart. There are some people that even get past that point and get all the way up to you have a polished, done manuscript and you're ready to hand it off to a publisher. That long, hard road, y'all, of searching for a publisher or a literary agent or whatever avenue you're going with that, or you're researching self-publishing. There are people that just give up on that too, where they're just like, this is too hard, it's too much, it's too overwhelming, that you are just bogged down by the rejection. Rejection hurts. Not everybody's thick-skinned enough to take that kind of rejection and criticism of their work. And there are so many people that'll give up at that point of the juncture. There are even people where they make it past all these hurdles and it's a book. And then now comes time you have to shop your book. You have to be like, all right, I need to do online advertising. I need to get this in front of people's faces. I need to get my friends and family on board. I need to go to events. I need to go to libraries. I need to go to signings. I need to go to conventions. People are like, you know what? It's a book and it's in the world. I'm done. I'm outie. There are people that give up at that point. There are even people where they get through all of this and they even do all the marketing and all the sales and all the things, and they're not getting the numbers that they were hoping for. And they're just like, I'm done. Can't do it. Gave it my all, and this is just where it is. There are all those different points in the path where people will give up. And it's not necessarily a conscious decision. There are plenty of people who, I see it online every day, people will post about how they're just giving up on writing for one reason or another. But then there are also the people where the giving up just kind of sneaks up on them, where they have an unexpected child, where they have an unexpected illness or accident or a death in the family, or they have a severe injury that leaves them having to relearn massive parts of their daily life. There are people that go through financial crisis. There are people that lose their home or are in very complicated living situations. There are people that go through divorce. There are even people where it's not even anything as drastic and horrible as any of that. Some of it is they get married, they have a kid, they start living their life, and then all of a sudden it's 10, 20, 30 years later and they realize, oh, I kind of never opened up my writing again. It just kind of sat there and I just kind of forgot about it. That happens. It's not always a thing that happens all at once. It's I'll get back to that. I'll get back to that. I'll get back to that. And then you just never do. These things happen. And this video is not meant to shame anybody or to throw any shade or to make anyone feel like a failure, because you're not. At the end of the day, you're not. The point of this video is that so many people will attribute giving up on writing is due to all of these different things. You know, oh, this is hard. Oh, that's challenging. I don't know how to do that. Blah, blah, blah. There's always a way around things that are hard, or around things that you don't know how to do, or around things that you need help with, that you need to bring in other people. There's always different solutions to those problems. At the end of the day, the main component for what truly will make this journey fall apart for you is that you just don't keep going. That's what drives it. You have to have that motivation, that time and space, that wherewithal to be able to pick yourself back up and be like, all right, editing is hard and I can't afford an editor, but by golly, you know what? I'm going to keep giving it my best. And you know what? I have a friend and he's not a writer, but he knows a good story when he sees one. I'll ask him if he'll read it over for me. Or if it's, hey, you know what? You have a new baby and that is the hardest thing in the world. You don't even have 5 minutes to yourself. You then put a little reminder on your phone that, you know what? When my baby turns 1, and I finally have 5 minutes peace in my life again, I'm going to make sure that I have 10 minutes a day to work on my writing. I'm going to set this goal for myself that once I get through this gauntlet of new baby, I'm going to work on my book again. And by God, I'm going to do it. Maybe it's, you know what? I am living in a really bad living situation right now, and writing is the last thing that I have headspace for. But that doesn't mean you're going to be in this living situation necessarily forever. When you finally do get back on your feet, and you finally do get in a safe place, you can tell yourself, oh yeah, you know what my life is missing now that I have security and safety and comfort again? My writing. And again, this is all taking into consideration the fact that there are just things that happen that just make our writing fall off the face of the earth for one reason or another. And you shouldn't feel bad about that. You shouldn't feel shame for that. Life happens. Our goals change. We as people change. I can't tell y'all the number of goals that I just didn't keep going on, that I did, whether it was all at once or, you know, death by 1,000 paper cuts, I gave up on. There are plenty of things that I did that with. And part of that is also knowing, you know what, that was a chapter of my life and I lived it, and I'm moving on to a new chapter, and that's okay. For some people, writing is their whole life, and that's me. Writing is my life. It is ma raison d'être. It is my everything. Whereas for other people, it's just a chapter in their book of life. It's just a footnote in their book of life. And you know what? That's okay, because I have those. I worked as a drag performer for several years, and it was amazing and exciting, and I loved it. But it's done. That chapter of my life is done. I'm never going to reopen that chapter ever again. There are so many reasons behind why, but it's done. I was a swimmer for 10 years of my life. that chapter of my life has been done for just as long as I swam, if not more. Modeling has been several chapters of my life. There are several times that I have had a modeling career and then I stepped away from it, and then I did modeling again, and then I stepped away from it, and I had my reasons. But now I have closed the door on that, where I'm like, this is not my career anymore, and while every once in a while I'll do some modeling stuff, the book is closed on it being my profession. It's not a thing that I'm going to do again. I'm not going to be going on tour again. I'm not going to be doing photography workshops again. All of that, those chapters are done. And then, of course, you know, there are the things that are the footnotes. For instance, at one point in my life, I wanted to be a scientist. At another point in my life, I wanted to be a dancer. There are so many different things that I pursued, whether it was for a short period of time or I just stuck my toe in the pool and realized, you know what? Nope, that's not for me. That's not a thing that I can do for X number of reasons. The main ones being I'm just not suited for it. I don't have the time for it, and it's hard. And that's another thing that you have to consider with the just keep going is this really the big end all thing that you want to do? Is this the thing that you really want to put all those eggs in that basket? Because writing is one of the art forms that takes a ton of time and a ton of effort. And it is a lot of effort and a lot of time that nobody is ever going to see but you. The amount of years, y'all, that I have spent writing things that likely no one will ever see. And even the things that the iterations of them that no one will ever see. Just the sheer amount of work that no one will ever see. Because when you hold a book in your hands, that's just the end product. That's just the shiny, polished jewel that we decide to finally present to you. It's not like a performance where you can share it. It's not like a song where you can hear it. There is so much more work that goes into it behind the scenes that no one will ever see because it's not a performative art form. It is ugly and it is boring and it is grueling. I am sorry, but watching a writer work is the most god-awful boring thing on the planet. It's 90% of it is just literally this. It's just that, literally just that. It's us just staring at the screen, deleting stuff, writing something, deleting it again, rewriting something else, scrolling through and reading another part, going back up and being disgusted with something else in your writing. It's boring. There's just so much behind the scenes that no one is ever going to see and that no one should ever see. And so knowing that, it's a hard art form. It's not for everybody. And that's why so many people will fall to the just they won't keep going. And that's okay. But at the same time, it goes to show that just so much more recognition and accolades should go to the people who do just keep going because of how hard and thankless it is to being a writer, to have that gumption, or in some people's opinions, stupidity, to just keep going is a miracle in and of itself. Just this past year, 2024, I will admit I was disgusted with myself. I felt very much like I had sat down in the road and I had stopped going. From an outside perspective, I did a ton of writing work last year. I did a ton of work on my novel Be Mine. In fact, I could have published it if I had wanted to, but the problem is it wasn't ready. And I never want to share a story that I don't feel is ready yet. And I've had to go in and rip it apart. The story is going to be so much better now because of the feedback that I've gotten from my beta readers, as well as just me sitting with the story, which is another thing that is a thing that no one else will see but you, is sitting with your story. Sometimes you have to just shut that manuscript away in a drawer for a month or 6 months or a year and then come back to it and then rip it apart and rebuild it again. Sometimes you have to do that. And that's essentially what I had to do with this book. And I'm going to make it better than ever. And I can't wait to be able to present that polished, beautiful, gleaming jewel to y'all so that y'all finally can see all of that work where it appeared from the outside that I was just sitting in the middle of the road. Because contemplation and editing and just racking your brain, all of that from the outside looks very much like you're just sitting there and doing a whole lot of nothing. But that's also part of what makes The going forward and the will to keep going so hard is because so much of it you're going to do without an audience. So much of it you're going to have the internet breathing down your neck, being like, where is it? Where's your next work? Are you working on it? We need proof. Show it to us. And you don't have anything to show them. You don't have anything that you can share. And it sucks. And that is truly what the biggest challenge of being a writer or an author is having to keep going even when it feels like you're sitting in the middle of the road. I hope this video was helpful. If you liked it, please be sure to give it a like. And if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.